I've got the red live button in my corner on my screen, and Happy New Year to everyone listening. I'm very excited today to have Anna Fruehling. How did I do on your name?
Anna Fruehling. The first
There
vowel
we go.
does the walking, the second vowel does the talking.
Super. Well, I have a little bit polluted accent being a Midwest girl with a Dutch accent. So I make my excuses on names all the time. But we are going to be talking today about sugar addiction. And Anna is just a fabulous educator, motivator, passionate person in that space. Before we get started, I must let everyone know that this live stream, along with all of our Monday live streams, is not intended for personal medical advice. If you are seeking personal medical attention, advice, please reach out to us at team@ifixhearts.com. And you can talk to a real live person there, and we will help you sort out if we're a good fit and we can work on your medical needs. Well, welcome, Anna.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Very excited. I think this is such a great conversation given we're here at the new year. You have all the New Year's resolutions mania. We're also just here in the week when we came out with the new dietary guidelines. Lots of just changes happening. But before that, some of our audience might know very well what you do. I know you have a strong fan base. However, there might be some listeners who don't. Can you catch them up with how you ended up in this space, what your work, and maybe some insights on your current work?
Absolutely. I think that the thing to think about is, well, I'll tell you, I was a primal health coach for years. I was one of the early adopters. I have 5 autoimmune diseases, and my last one diagnosed was celiac. And when I removed gluten, half of my symptoms disappeared immediately from my rheumatoid arthritis. And I have severe RA. And so I was like on all the medications and unable to move and enjoy my life. And I was in pain 24/7. So I wondered what else food did, to the health. And so I started looking into Mark Sisson, and I became an early adopter of the primal lifestyle. I trained through him as a primal health coach, and I was a primal health coach for years, and I can help anyone lose weight. I can help anyone regain their metabolic health. But to stay metabolically healthy, I noticed that around 70% of my clients returned to, quote unquote, their old ways. And I was baffled by it, and I was heartbroken by it. And I heard Bitten Johnson on a Quit Sugar Summit years and years ago, and I heard her talk about sugar as the gateway drug. And it made sense to me because I'm a recovering addict. And I started thinking about how when I was a kid, I climbed up on the kitchen counter to get some baby aspirin because I needed something sweet. I wanted something. My mom gave me Tootsie Pops for treats when I was really little. I was formula fed, which is an ultra processed food full of corn syrup and sugars and things like that back in the day. I don't know what they make it out of now, but I'm sure it's not very, I'm sure it's the 3 ingredients we warn against mostly are your sugars, your grains, and your seed oils. None of these are foods that were known to man. So imagine being a baby and being born, and there were no stores, and your parents had to hunt and gather everything. And they were so motivated for survival. And it was like Huberman talks about, right? When he talks, I'm talking about Huberman Labs and his podcast, but he talks about there's 2 kinds of ways to chase dopamine. There's either the pursuit of pleasure, or there's the pleasure pursuit. And so back then, when there were no grocery stores, no packaged foods, and you had to survive, people really loved and felt very successful and good about the hunt. And that's why you see the walls all with the hunt and everything painted on them. And now I don't even have to leave my house. I
That's
don't have
true.
to do anything. I can sit in my home and anything can be delivered to me. And so we don't have this, we're pursuing happiness all the time. We're pursuing what's the next thing that's going to make me feel good, that's going to make me feel whole, that's going to make me feel a certain kind of way. And I think that, what's really important is the eat less, move more. If that has never worked for you, there's a reason. And I think it's not a lack of willpower. It's not a lack of it's not a discipline problem. It is absolutely not because you can't stick to anything, because most women I know have stuck to every single diet. They've done the Whole30, they have a Weight Watchers membership. They have stuck to a lot of things and they ended up dieting their way up the scale, right? Because it wasn't sustainable. Well, why is that? And it's because for some people, certain foods trigger a chemical reaction in our body. And I'm going to actually say for all people, there are certain foods that are made to be addictive, right? There's something called the bliss point, and that's the exact right combination of sugars, flours, whatever, salty, sweet, that hits the brain at a certain point, and they test it on people. And that's why there's, 50 million types of Prego spaghetti sauce. I was saying to my husband the other day, I can't believe how many different kinds of Reese's peanut butter cups there are now. Like there was one Reese's peanut butter cup, right? And so now it's more different, better. And it's almost like if you check out in any checkout line, including the self-checkout now, it is like you're going through an aisle of drug foods, is what I call them, before you even get to check out your cart. And so all the way you're accosted by these things that your brain knows make you feel some kind of way, right? That your brain has known that since you were a little kid. And so certain foods start a conversation in your head that's hard to shut off. Like I haven't eaten sugar, grains, or seed oils for years and years, and my mouth watered when I saw those Reese's peanut butter cups, right? So that's a biochemical thing called euphoric recall. My brain still remembers how those foods made me feel. And that hyperpalatable sets off, this, fireworks and this fire hose of dopamine. And in addiction, what happens is the dopamine receptors shut down. And so now you need more. And you find yourself maybe sneaking food, hiding food. Maybe you decided maybe I'll just have a few Oreos and it's a new package, but you ended up eating the whole sleeve of Oreos and you didn't want to explain that to your family. So you hid those Oreos and you went to the store and you bought a new package of Oreos to replace those to cover your tracks. So you start doing these things that make you feel like you're weak, you're to blame, but you're not. This happened to you, not because of you. And so addiction crosses that line where that dopamine reward center is changed. And there's a lot of biochemistry underneath that too, with your up and down blood sugar causing cravings, hyperinsulinemia, all that kind of stuff that you guys talk about. And we really believe the keto diet I don't want to say the keto diet, but becoming metabolically flexible it answers a lot of the problems with your brain health and with your cravings, the physical part of your cravings.
Well, great introduction, and thank you also for sharing your personal story. Let's kind of pick apart a few of those things, but yes, and I want to do a shout out to a couple of people you mentioned. First is Bitten Janssen. If any listeners are not familiar, she is a registered nurse who's become quite an advocate and educator, I like to say, in the space of sugar addiction. Talk a little bit more for anyone who's not familiar with some of these terms and things. This idea that many, we not only was the eat less, move more decades, but it was often all about willpower. This idea that you're just not strong enough because you're either eating too much, not exercising enough. And this, and I'm grossly generalizing here, kind of moved also into the sugar area too. Or you're just eating too much. It's a question of willpower. Explain just a little bit more of how you work also with clients in this brain chemistry piece. I know Bitten has said this is not a question of willpower, but
Absolutely not.
you're
And actually, I'm on Bitten's staff. I help train a sugar addiction specialist in holistic medicine for addiction. And we do use her sugar tool, which maps out with the ICD, which is a diagnostic tool, in the DSM, another diagnostic tool that's the WHO, that shows and it gives you a graph, and it shows you at age 3, this is when you got your first symptom. At age 5, here's your next symptom. And usually what you'll see is around puberty is a whole bunch of symptoms. And so you've got this hormonal thing happening, and you've got junk food present. And so, you start feeling a certain kind of way, whatever, your biochemistry is already kind of messed up. And so you can see that this happened to the person, not because of the person. Because a 3-year-old, for instance, nobody gives a 3-year-old heroin, do they? But everybody loves to give a 1-year-old baby their first taste of ice cream. And I believe everyone in your audience, whether they're watching this now or they watch it later, has seen a baby get a taste of something sweet at a party or something like that. And all of a sudden they're like, ah, more, they want more. Why? That is a biochemical reaction of survival, because nothing sweet in nature is poisonous. But we're not eating sweet things from nature anymore. We would have had very rare access to honey and things like that. And we would have also, fruits were even different. They were small, they were
seasonal,
tons of seeds, tons of if you saw a grapefruit from ancient times, and sometimes you can look back at some paintings even and get an idea, like just look at not Van Gogh. I can't think of the Dutch master right now, but that did a lot of Rembrandt. He had a lot of foods and stuff, and you could see the difference between our produce now and the produce even a few hundred years ago. So I think it's really interesting that our brain, colostrum in nature, that's the first food a baby gets. And it's incredibly sweet. It's almost like melted ice cream. So your brain is saying, I need this to survive. And the part of your brain that's saying that is an ancient part of your brain that has not changed. And so now you're exposed to all of these things your brain thinks it needs to survive, because it thinks, when that part of your brain thinks you need to gain weight, you need to have fat on your body so you can survive lack. And the truth is, we are metabolically flexible for a reason, because we were made to be able to gain fat and almost become a little insulin resistant, just like bears, so we could survive times of lean. That was a protective thing for us. Now it's a constant thing. And it's because our brain now, we're blaming ourselves, and we're listening to people telling us to eat less of the same stuff that got us here in the first place.
Right.
So the thing about it is it's easier to eat none for some people than it is to eat one, because one is like the domino that makes the whole thing fall, right?
And I want to explore that abstination versus, kind of just trying to withdraw. We have a couple questions here.
Sure.
And then for anyone wanting to know more about Anna's work, you can reach her at SUGARx Global.com. I believe I got that right. Yes. So Renee had asked, isn't it the industry that only benefits from adding so much sugar to foods? Any feeling on that?
Well, absolutely. And I think that the cigarette companies took over food companies, and they marketed it just like they marketed cigarettes. And just like one cigarette's not going to hurt someone. One bite won't hurt. One taste won't hurt. But if you have no off button, and if you're constantly doing battle, and what happens for some people is they'll think they're being abstinent, but what happens is they're drawn, the pull of the foods, the pull of the memory of the food, maybe something happens in their life, whatever, they start eating it again, and then boom. So this is what happens like with the Whole30, where they do take out all of that stuff for the most part, because you're not understanding, you're treating a brain problem with a diet. And what you need is a food plan that keeps you safe. In other words, I know what I can't eat. I know what my trigger foods are. And some of those are foods that other people might be able to eat safely that I can't. I'm not going to eat certain foods that trigger me to want to eat more. Like even things like some people, it's fine. Eat roasted vegetables that are roasted and brown and whatever. I could eat a whole head of cauliflower that way, right? Because it's so sweet and it triggers me to think about food all the time because of the taste of it. So I like my food, like today for lunch, I had some Greek burgers that had some really good goat feta cheese in them and some olives and some lemon zest and things like that. So I'm not saying I don't enjoy my food and I don't make it palatable and nice, but I know myself. I know when my brain is turning on and turning that corner and saying more, different, better. But the companies are adding not just sugar, and sugar has way more than 2,000 names, but MSG is one of the most addictive substances you can eat. And if you ask me, it's incredible to me, and I'm going to use Bitten's words, people will eat something with an ingredient list this long, including like a keto treat, and they don't know what that stuff is. A chemical shitstorm, right? And I could sit there with a 12-ounce or 16-ounce steak in front of me with all the fat on it and anoint it with olive oil, and people are looking at me like, aren't you going to die of a heart attack eating that? And while they're eating that thing, out of a box, bag, package, or wrapper. Sometimes when I go to the grocery store today, I think like my great aunt Dot, she lived to be 108. And she lived, where there was nothing. Like they farmed they grew their own vegetables. They had a milk cow. They got meat from somebody that they knew. They hung beef in the barn and sliced pieces off in the winter. Like, I wonder if she would even like recognize the grocery store right now.
Yeah, that's very true. I want to touch on one thing that you said, and we definitely support here at the Ovadia Heart Health team, is metabolic flexibility. Again, there might be some people listening that don't really understand with it, but how does a metabolically flexible individual, and from our standpoint, that is reducing your sugar and carbohydrate intake so that your body can see different fuels, whether it's fat on your body, ketone production, or also blood sugar.
Right. And I think, we were born to be metabolically flexible because the human animal is one of the only animals that's born fat, right? An infant has some fat on its body, and babies, when they're healthy, are actually born into ketosis. And that's a medical fact. And so why would it be? They don't shiver, they don't get cold, they have lots of brown fat. That's how we're supposed to be, right? We're supposed to be able to survive off of our own fat, just like a bear in the winter. And so the thing is, most people are sugar burners, not by choice, but because the dietary guidelines, we want to be good. We want to follow what everybody is saying. We want to eat less and move more. And the things that we're eating less of are the things that are probably healthier for us, like the red meat and the butter and the things like that. So we're taking those off of the plate, and we're saying sugar. Remember when they used to say sugar was harmless and it's an empty calorie? Like, it's just an empty calorie. Well, who wants to eat an empty calorie? Eat a calorie that's going to grow your bones, that's going to make your mitochondria healthier. And your mitochondria are the batteries of your life. And so when we say we want you to be able to burn sugar or fat, which you're designed to do, to therapeutically lower your carbs to the point where your body starts being able to use fat for fuel. And usually that's going to be, you're going to have to eat quite a bit of fat, especially in the beginning, because you need to replace that energy from your body using sugar. Your body doesn't know how to take, believe it or not, triglycerides, you guys. That's what your fat storage is. Okay. It's the same thing your doctor doesn't want you to have in your lipid profile, but triglycerides are what you store your body fat as. And when you can remove those or access those from your own body, you have thousands and thousands of calories worth of energy in your triglycerides. It's a beautiful thing. So in 1 pound of fat, you have like 3,500 calories worth of energy that you can't access because you're eating sugar. And that keeps a chemical in your body, a hormone in your body called insulin up. And when insulin is up, that stores the body fat. That's going to push it into places you don't want it to go. Like, for instance, in diabetes, your eyesight's going to start going. You're going to start having numbness in your feet. What this is glycation. And so most Americans are glycated. They have a lot of sugar in places you don't want them to have. And that's like dipping a sugar donut into the glaze, and it's perfectly soft and beautiful. And that's how your red blood cells should be. So maybe I'm getting too technical here, but your red blood cells don't have mitochondria, so they need sugar to function. So certain cells in your body have to have sugar, but they have to have the right amount. And so every time you eat too much sugar, it's like you're dipping that donut back into the sugar, and that cell gets harder and harder. And when the blood has too much sugar, it starts shoving it in places it's not supposed to go.
And this is where we start that cascade of metabolically poor health, right? We know that some statistics say 83%, or no, sorry,
93%.
93% of adults are not metabolically healthy. We're hoping they change. But you brought up a point here we must touch on, is the dietary guidelines.
Right.
We have recently just flipped. I was obviously not part of that, but the HHS and the FDA have put out a new dietary guidelines for 2025 to 2030. How do you think this is going to impact, let's say, whether you're an individual who has a sugar addiction, or the work basically that you're doing to try to educate people about the perils of high sugar and high carbohydrate consumption? Do you see this as a change factor? Do you see this?
I think that that's going to be something that's a wait and see. I think we'll have to see. But I do want to say, with the switching fuels, you only store 1,000 calories of sugar in your body. So when you access that little triglyceride, the glycerol background is actually sugar, and that literally the three fatty acids that it's holding together become ketones. And ketones, when they go to your brain, they do magical things, including increasing your mitochondria in your brain. That means you can make better short-term decisions. Your short-term memory is better. All kinds of magical things happen besides burning off fat inside of you, which is the most important fat to burn off, right? The visceral fat, the fat that gives people a belly. And so I just wanted to say that. But I think the dietary guidelines, it's great. I think the politics that, have divided our country might play a role in whether people even look at them or not. That's something I have no control over. But what I know is it's more important what you don't eat than what you do eat. So having a perfect diet and that kind of thing, I think, can get people hung up in the minutia. Like, if every American would stop eating certain foods, even for 21 days, and just see how you feel, even if you were eating, say, a piece of fruit 3 times a day, right? I'm talking about if you removed grains, seed oils, and sugars, all sugars, including natural sugars, including sugar substitutes. Just get rid of that taste. Your palate would change, your body would change, your brain would change. So, not everybody is going to feel comfortable ripping the Band-Aid or whatever. I call it go low, slow. And sometimes that's a safer thing to do for certain people if you're on tons of medication. And I'm glad that you guys do a great medical disclaimer at the beginning. I've had people come off of insulin in less than 24 hours of dropping sugars.
Oh, that's pretty amazing. I think, well, first, let me put the website up there. If you're interested in working with Dr. Ovadia in terms of heart health, reach out to us at the ovadiahearthealth.com. The /wellness is about our employee wellness programs, and we're trying to bring the metabolic health message to the workplace as well. And we work on a lot of things we've already touched about here: metabolic flexibility, understanding the role that metabolic health plays in everything and every connection to various chronic diseases. There'll be before we go on, there'll be people that will often say, well, sugar addiction isn't real.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you've heard that. We might even have some people listening that, don't believe that. How do you combat that?
Well, I worked with Dr. Nicole Avina on a project where there were 40 of us worldwide trying to get sugar addiction onto the DSM with the WHO. And she and I both agree that sugar is the gateway drug. No, but like I said, nobody gives a child heroin. But the problem with trying to quit sugar, and when I say sugar, I mean all the starches like the grains and all that stuff, because that's even worse. I mean, it turns into more sugar inside of you anyway. So I worked with this woman who has done more studies to show that sugar is an addictive substance in the brain. You can actually see. You can look up Dr. Nicole Avina and you can look up her body of work. And she has study after study after study after study showing it. And recently, I can't think of her first name, but Gerhardt, she did a study and it showed that in our total population in America, and it was a very good study, very sound study, that more people are addicted to sugar than there are addicted to alcohol. And so the rate of alcoholism in total is 10%. The rate of sugar addiction is 13%. But when she sorted that out by age and sex, women in our age group, Krisna, so women from about the age of, say, 55 to about 65 or 70, I think it was 70, 21% are shown to be addicted using questions that are used to show addiction, with gambling, with things like that. And the reason a lot of professionals, and let me tell you, some of these professionals are in the back pockets of food companies who have a vested interest in telling you that sugar is not addictive and that it is a neutral substance. They have a vested interest in that. So they say you have to eat. That's the straw man argument they use. You have to eat. So how can you say food addiction or this or that, which I prefer to call it sugar addiction, because I think that's the gateway drug. And when I say sugar, like I said, a complex carbohydrate is just simple sugars holding hands. And as soon as it hits your mouth, like my friends, the Unwins, talk about, it stops holding hands. And now it's simple sugar anyway. So there's not a lot of difference between simple and complex carbohydrates. Your body doesn't care. It's the same thing to it. So the people that are saying this have a vested interest. They'll lose money. And you can see now they're trying to reduce sugar and everything because people are catching on. More and more people are talking about it. More and more people are showing. Even Nick Norowitz, he's talked. I interviewed him years ago, and he said changes can be seen in the brain and addiction is real. And he's talking about sugar addiction now. I hope to see a little bit more money and funding going from the Bazooki Group for sugar addiction and that kind of thing, because I think that the problem is a lot of people with mental illness, a lot of depression clears up. One thing that I've been fascinated and excited to see among my clients is people that have been depressed for years, haven't felt good about themselves for years, and have been on have been in psychotherapy, have been taking medication for depression. And all of a sudden they're like, I'm not depressed. It was the sugar. It was the way I was eating that was causing me all this misery.
Fascinating. And I love this. I'm going to have to dig a little bit more into this research about these comparisons to alcohol addiction and sugar, but definitely believe it. We have a few comments here.
I'll email you the link. I have the article saved.
Would love it. Got Hope 77 says it's definitely real. That's
a client of mine. Hey,
excellent. I love it. I told you have a fan club and they're listening. I see Ellie, you put some, lipid numbers in here. Definitely reach out to someone. Those are specific questions. In terms of your lipid panel, reach out to us at Ovadia Heart Health. And someone can, point you in the right direction as it's a specific medical question. Renee says sugar is a silent killer. Yes.
Yes,
And
Renee. And I will say that, my husband says he's not treating heart disease. He's treating the consequences of pretty much what we put in our mouth.
One of the things we're, as I've already said a couple times, we're really helping to spread the word about investing in your health, good metabolic health, as we're working in the workplace with individuals. But this is a comment we hear not only from our employee wellness programs, but from clients all the time. It's challenging. Everywhere you go, there's sugar. And again, I think it's important what you said about refined carbohydrates holding hands together.
Yes.
Because once ingested, your body doesn't know whether you ate a Snickers bar or you had that, so-called whole wheat piece of toast.
Exactly.
Right?
And I think, part of the problem, Krisna, is that our brain is designed to stay with certainty. And so when we stop eating certain things, our brain starts manufacturing all these things like, well, I just want to be normal. Well, it tells us I've been good, so now I can have this, at the party. And then we wonder, and we take that first bite and we feel confused and we feel like, that small bite turns into a back and forth negotiation with our brain for days, maybe weeks on end, where we're thinking, should I eat it? Shouldn't I eat it? How much can I eat? What can I eat? And now we're back in the whole food cycle because that hunter-gatherer part of our brain that's been damaged by this stuff, and that we have the euphoric recall. Like when you see that baby get that ice cream and they go, oh, that's euphoric recall. The wiring is in there, and we've had it over and over again. And then it's like, now we live in a society where it's like, I need something, right? You don't even know what you need, but you need something. And I'm telling you that 0 is better than 1 for most people, but you have to rewire your brain. You have to do kind of like, your boss does bypasses, right? He'll do a cardiac bypass.
Right.
And so we need a brain bypass. We need to figure out ways to understand that's not us. That is that dopamine reward center wanting a hit. It wants something to spray out like a fire hose. So a lot of things that we can do to make that easier is to plan, prepare, and protect. That's something we talk about. Plan your meals. If you're going out to a restaurant, don't be shy to call and say, what do you have that I can eat? And if there's nothing, go ahead and go out with your friends. They want to have pizza, let them have pizza. Eat before you go. Get a sparkling water or something and say, I'm just here for the company. If they say, well, why aren't you eating pizza or whatever? Have a plan. What are you going to say?
Yes.
Say something like, I've eaten enough pizza for all of us. I've eaten my fair share of pizza for a lifetime. So be funny, be pleasant, start focusing on people. Otherwise what happens is you go out with a friend, you eat your lunch. I remember these days, maybe both of us had a dessert, but I wanted to lick my plate. Like I didn't want to leave a crumb on there. And if a friend didn't finish her piece of cake or whatever it was, I was so obsessed about how could she not finish that cake? What is the matter with her that I couldn't even be in the relationship? So if you have those kinds of, I call it the food mosquito buzzing around your head all day. What did I eat? Oh my gosh, I need to make up for this. What diet do I need to go on now? How much exercise? And you know what? I'll start tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes. And even though you don't want to eat that food is manufactured to make you want to eat it. And so once you take that bite, it's like one of my clients says, it would be easier to quit heroin because they don't serve that at family reunions.
And from the employer perspective, if we have any individuals thinking about trying to help their company get on a different path for the new year, is the easiest not have it around? How do you deal with the social piece that oftentimes, especially in the workplace, there'll be the candy jar there or something in the vending machine, or there's kind of like it's a minefield at times for
It
many.
is a minefield. It's a minefield everywhere you go. And so we have a little saying, we call it NMF, and we tell ourselves, not my food. And in fact, I tell myself it's not food. And one of my friends says, it's like art. It's not even made out of things that you can hunt, gather, fish for. It's none of that is real. It's all manufactured, and we eat it, and it's been normalized. Just because it seems normal that people are eating it doesn't mean that it's normal. And there's a difference between addiction and harmful use. A harmful user is someone who, they might have gotten carried away, and then they're like, you know what? Wow, that food is addictive. I'm just gonna have cake on my birthdays, and I'm gonna, do this and that. I'll have a piece of bread on the weekend or a plate of pasta on the weekend, and that's it. And they're able to stick with that because their brain hasn't like gone all the way to this obsession and compulsion where your brain has taken over. And if you ask me, the people that this happens to, because addiction happens to you, not because of you, and there's so much shame based around it. So it's what I would say to employers is, you better be talking about addiction like you're talking about the weather, because it's not just sugar addiction. I was a nurse. My husband's a doctor. I know very many medical professionals that you'll see over the years, and I'm sure Dr. Ovadia, and we've had him on Clubhouse a couple of times, and he came on as a guest for SUGARx Global meeting once, and he's a great guy. We all see people that have stolen drugs from the hospital, working at the hospital and taking these opioids, right? Addiction is a real thing, and it affects us all. And it's one disease with many outlets, and it's a brain disease, and the brain is an organ. And so what I would say to these places is that if you want your employees to be healthy, you need to really very basically and very easily talk about addiction as if you're talking about a broken bone or the weather. It should not be a shame-based thing, because no one wants to steal drugs from their employee. No one wants to take someone else's lunch out of the refrigerator, which we've had happen too. When I was a nurse, like somebody stole somebody's goodies, right? Because they had to have something.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the number one thing I would say. Figure that out. And if you want help, reach out to me. I'd be happy to help you organize that. We would love to help companies with addiction as well. That's something we've been talking about for a couple of years and just haven't, I'm doing it with my husband at the St. Francis Hospital here in town, but that's about it.
And this is a really important, I call it dismantling the shame, shield, really, that has been placed on a lot of individuals. And I think one of the things we did at one of our manufacturing firms was we had a group, but we opened up to anyone who had something they felt that they were really dealing with in this addiction phase, not just harmful use. You could come if you had a sugar addiction. You could come if you were vaping. And the thing that brought them all together, which was lovely, was them all understanding each other with a different lens. Because we have put, particularly, and again, I'm generalizing here, that it's only either smoking or alcohol or drug abuse. We have not sort of recognized globally that these same issues can occur with sugar. And again, for the audience, we're including refined carbohydrates in that sugar. We're just using one word here. And we need to be able to have that good, honest conversation.
Yes, and I think, that the shame is so heavy and so real that it's really hard for an addict to reach out and ask for help. And I think part of the shame comes from confusion, because people have a certain vision and image for what an addict is. And, addicts have been called certain names like a derelict, or for instance, or things like that, or women have heard things like, oh, she'd be so pretty if she wasn't so heavy, or things like that. And I am absolutely flabbergasted with the metabolic instability that's out there now, because as you said, 93% of people are metabolically unhealthy, and the number with children it's horrible. My father-in-law he just celebrated his 80th birthday in September, and he's family practice doctor. And we have a large Hispanic population where I live, and 5-year-olds, Hispanics can have a gene, 1 or 2 genes that make them more susceptible to liver damage through especially high fructose corn syrup. And so he has diagnosed 5-year-olds with fatty liver disease.
Oh, this is so tragic.
So
Yes.
we're talking about something that, people are literally eating themselves to death. And the number one reason for liver transplant now is a fatty liver from not alcoholism, and also not from, it used to be liver transplants were from hepatitis B, right? No, now it's because of a fatty liver that is caused by what you put in your mouth. And people are literally eating themselves to death and don't know what to do about it, or how it's happening to them, because the media and the big food and the diet industry, they're all in cahoots. They make foods, Weight Watchers has their label on foods for healthy choice or whatever, they're all putting their shaking hands, making money off of each other at your expense, telling you if you just eat less calories and if you move more, you're going to be okay. I'm 5'4", and I'm a medium-sized woman. I'm like a size 6s and 8s. I'm small boned, and I probably eat on average 2,000 calories a day. And I have people coming to me who are, they're restricting so much on the eat less, move more thing that they're binging because hunger.
Yeah, of course. They have no energy, right?
And the hunger is also coming from the up and down blood sugar, because what you're eating less of is the same poison that got you where you were to begin with, because all things in moderation, they want to keep selling you those foods. They want to, my business partner, David Wolf, he was a registered dietitian for years. He couldn't take it anymore. He was helping people with gastric bypass, and he was like, you have a brain problem, not a stomach problem. And that's a statistic that's alarming, that almost 60% of people that have a gastric bypass, which I believe is going to be obsolete because of GLP-1s now, but they become alcoholic. And we get people in all the time. We've had people over the years that were on GLP-1s that quit working for them. There's a tolerance level with everything. And so if we don't learn like the truth about what's really happening with the brain, a little bit of the brain chemistry, the brain science, balance out those hormones through proper eating. And that means becoming a fat burner. And that's usually going to be by therapeutically reducing your carbs significantly until your body learns how to burn fat on its own. And then you can slowly add back natural carbs that would be found in nature, usually in the form of vegetables and things like that, maybe a little starchy vegetable if you can tolerate it, but you've got to find your carbohydrate curve, like where your body functions best, feels best. For some people, that could be 0. For some people, it might be 20. For some people, 50. For some people, it might be 100. But once you get up into the 150 gram territory, I can't imagine most people would have eaten like that unless they lived in the tropics, getting that much carbohydrate for survival. So to me, it just seems, and they say the average amount of carbohydrate intake is about 300 grams a day, but I argue that's a low number, and that hasn't been studied for a long time. Because when you look at even some of these coffee drinks and some of these places that are popping up now, I can't remember what they're called, but my husband and I were looking one up one day, and it was like, it had something like 85 or 90 grams of sugar in it.
Yeah. My husband calls them the sugar bombs. They're not coffee. They're coffee disguised with lots of sugar in it. But you just gave some very practical tips here to, where to begin, right? We talked about recognizing where you are in terms of your, addiction level here, trying to incorporate a nutritional lifestyle that reduces your blood sugar volatility, becoming metabolically flexible. What would be some other just practical, not just for companies, but also just on an individual? What would any other steps that you would tell people to try to encourage? Would that be getting in a group? We know group
Oh,
work
absolutely. I don't think
helps.
this is something you can do on your own because your brain is going to fight you tooth and nail. A survival part of your brain is going to be, it's going to be the monkey on your back that's talking to you all the time. It's going to be, oh my gosh, can I eat that? What can I eat? And you're going to be trying to find the exact right food plan without support, and you're going to go off the rails. And I've seen people go vegan. I've seen people go carnivore and stay carnivore even when they didn't feel good and might have felt better adding back in some carbs, because they get afraid of food and even afraid of the pleasure of food. And so all kinds of things addiction likes to morph. It likes to turn one obsession and compulsion into another obsession and compulsion. It's always looking for an outlet. And so it's one disease with many outlets. And so I would also say that if you have a family history of addiction, or you've been a smoker, or you have had maybe you go to a 12-step program, maybe it would be worth it to take a look at yourself and see, hey, was sugar the gateway drug for me?
Absolutely.
And the thing about it is zero is not only easier than one bite. One is too many, 1,000 is never enough. It's also freeing because you don't have to negotiate with yourself anymore. You don't have to think about food all the time. Just for today, I don't eat that stuff. And it feels really good, and it feels very freeing. And so for me, it's discipline is like, it's a lot about just what you remove, not what you do. What you remove that makes it hard for you to do what you actually want to do. Because if you think like me that you can eat one Oreo and not want another one, and you don't think that box of Oreos or that package of whatever it is going to call to you from the pantry, for me, it's just no, don't take the first bite, and then I have some peace and freedom. And then after that, I have to deal with that part of my brain is going to look for opportunities to exist and to make itself known. And so I'm also a high performance coach through Brendan Burchard. And I believe mindset is everything. Learning how to change your mindset is the brain bypass, right? Learning how to see this. For me, addiction is a gift because I have a life that I can't even imagine I would have had without addiction. I've even written a book that I donate the proceeds to children's programs that support children of addicts. I've been able to have a voice in this space and help many, many people, overcome their fear of addiction. Addiction has been around since mankind has been around, since something got fermented and we felt some kind of way, right?
Right. And for those of you listening, if you want to know more about Anna's work, SUGARx Global.com. If you'd like to know more about what we're doing at Ovadia Heart Health in the employee wellness space, we're at ovadiahearthealth.com/wellness. We also have a host of white papers that are free for download. Latest one is on resiliency. We just finished a case study for a dental firm in Oregon where we had some amazing results in 6 months there. We've got lots of information free for you. Take advantage of it. And that is at ovadiahearthealth.com/case studies. I have to ask this question because we get asked this maybe in every show. Well, we're not always talking about sugar, but certainly in our own sites. Very, very common question. I'm sure you've heard 1,000 times. Okay, so Anna, is it okay if I eat, fake sugar? What's the difference? Fake sugar okay or real sugar? Does it matter? Is my Diet Coke okay? How do you approach that elephant in the room?
Well, I think that, I look at it as kind of a methadone program. And then I also say, we have a saying, my plate, my plan, my business. And so if that's going to make or break you, whether you have a Diet Coke once a day but you can change everything else and get those sweeping health changes. I'm not here to judge what someone does. I want to see you get better, period. I want to see you get better. I lost a friend, and the last time I saw her, she was 50 years old and she still had 2 kids at home. And she was sitting in a wheelchair with an above the knee amputation, smoking a cigarette, eating some kind of junk out of a bag, and with a huge soda on her lap as a type 2 diabetic. She literally ate herself to death. And she died that year from her type 2 diabetes. My husband says, heart disease is the #1 killer, but if they really looked at it as the metabolic syndrome, that's what they would say was the killer. And so if you can make changes towards your metabolic health and you don't want to rip the Band-Aid, go ahead and do you, but then start to become more honest. When the system starts to change and you start feeling better, check yourself. Are you thinking about that Diet Coke all day? Is that Diet Coke making you think about other foods? But I honor you and support you in making changes towards the better. Putting down liquid sugar first is a great first move. It is a great first move. Don't drink anything with a calorie, I say. Nothing, 0 things. And, with our people, we believe, alcohol is a fermented sugar. That's what it is. It's fermented grain and fermented sugar. It is the food made up a notch. So we say nothing that hits that area of the brain. We want you off of cigarettes, vapes, whatever, because that part of the brain, if it stays getting hit, it's going to stay on the hunt for the wrong things, for the things you don't want. Nobody wants to smoke. We may say we enjoy it. I used to be a smoker. I enjoyed it. If they weren't bad for you and nobody thought they stunk, I would probably still smoke. Right. But it's not true. Right?
Once upon a time, your doctor recommended, Camels were the preferred brand. We've gone down that route. But that's wonderful, very practical advice. As we start getting closer to the end of our time here, is there anything that we haven't touched upon that you feel is really important for people to understand, not only about your work, but just helping to inspire this idea of putting your metabolic health as a priority, finding the right resources to support you, meeting you where we are?
Well, I think I'd just like to talk directly to people, and that is to say that postponing change is something that we do naturally for that certainty that we want. And so we stay with what is because we're uncertain about what will be. It feels easier than facing things in the moment. And that just keeps the pattern going. So know that about the human brain. And there are tons of resources out there. You guys, us, and the Unwins in England, there's all kinds of resources. So do yourself a favor and start today. Don't kick the can down the road anymore. Get with people that understand what's happening to you and what could happen for you. What can happen for you. One of my clients, she was literally suffocating to death on her own visceral fat because it was pushing up on her lungs so much. And her obesity specialist sent her to us. And what she was doing was her obesity specialist even trained through Bitten, but she had lowered her food intake because she was trying to give her a really small window and get her into the fasting more. Well, our client was feeling hunger and she binged and she was ashamed. So she didn't tell her doctor. So she started, all of her, everything she gained was reversed. And so I would say, make sure if you have addiction, make sure you're in really good hands because it's really popular to talk about addiction right now. But talking about addiction and knowing how to treat this incredibly serious, complex brain thing is a whole different thing. Because it doesn't only affect your brain, it affects your hormones, your thinking, your decision making, all of it. And so you need to make sure you're with people. If you have an addiction or if you suspect you have an addiction, we can help you find that out through the Sugar Tool. You can go to Bit and Johnson's website. If you're in a different country, there's people all over the world that are certified through her sugar training and HMA training. And of course, we're on there as well. And so I would say understand that your brain wants certainty, not because you're weak. It's not because you're weak that you can't change. It's because your brain is saying, let's just wait because I'm not sure. And there is no certainty in life except for death and taxes, as they say.
Yeah, that's right.
So I want you guys to just take baby steps in the right direction and do what you can for your health today, because you know when it's too late. I was a hospice nurse for years, and I'll tell you what, I never heard someone say, I wish I would have worked more. I wish I would have done this more. I heard them say, I wish I would have taken care of my health when they told me to. I wish I would have quit drinking when they told me to. I should have quit smoking. You know, I should have spent more time with my kids. So don't put off a little discomfort now for the regret that you'll have later. I know my friend would want to be with her kids if she could. I know she would have, you know, on the other side of things, I know she would have changed what she was doing. Now is the time to change what you're doing, not later.
That's a powerful finish to our conversation. And it's been absolutely fantastic. We have up here, if you're watching live, our ovadiahearthealth.com/wellness to reach out to us about our programs. We'd love to help if you're working your company, inspire better metabolic health amongst everyone. If you'd like to reach out to Anna, know more about her programs, SUGARxglobal.com. Is this such a incredible time, and I learned a lot, and thank our audience for joining in. I'm sure you had some of your fan base tuning in, and we just have to keep the conversation going.
Absolutely. And thank you for helping me share this incredible message, because like I said, addiction, those of you with teenagers and kids, you've got to be able to talk about it without shaming someone and understanding that, of course, the brain wants these things, you know.
Everyone, I just had someone who was actually a client of ours, Martha, say, I needed this today. So that's an even more fun comment to end on. Thank you, Martha, for joining in, and shout out, and thank you for all your work, Anna, and we'll keep this conversation. We'll get you back on here one of these days soon.
Oh, that'd be fabulous. I'd love it.
Right. All right. Thank you all.